Today we are going to talk in these two very brief videos regarding negotiation and how persuasion is different from negotiation. Normally the business schools, including the Harvard Business School, they would have us believe that persuasion is fundamentally different from negotiation. But in our second video, we'd try to put forth a hypothesis that persuasion is an extension of negotiation or even a special case of negotiation. But that is for the second video. In the present one, we are going to emphasize on the art and science of negotiation. President Kennedy famously said, "Never negotiate out of fear, but never fear to negotiate." Now, even after the biggest wars, Indo-Pak War of 71, you had the similar agreement. Ultimately, the warring factions sit down, or wherever there is any dispute, instead of the disputes being settled by courts or arbitration and so on, normally people sit and try to sort out bilaterally, and that inherently involves negotiation. Now, in negotiation, what you have to basically see is that there can be 4 or 5 scenarios. The 4 classical scenarios are win-win, win-lose, lose-win, lose-lose, and finally what is called compromise. Now, what is a win-lose or a lose-win actually would depend upon the perspective. Maybe the other party would be thinking it is a win-win situation. Normally it is said that where each party gets up from the table a little dissatisfied, that is really a very fine negotiated settlement. Because if someone is gloating over success and feeling nice that he's taken the lion's share, that means essentially the negotiated settlement was skewed. But that is going into the details. What we need to first of all understand is that when we sit for negotiation, we have to separate the person from the issue. I mean, you may like the person, you may hate the person. Sometime in family settlements and negotiation, in marriage and divorce settlements and so on, and you know the person, there are other relationships bound by those. So when you are doing a negotiation, we have to really, in order to make the whole thing very objective, kind of separate or distance the person from the issue, and the negotiation should be focused on what the issue is. That is very important. The other thing is that, is the negotiation going to be one-off? You're walking down Janpath and your lady wife wants to buy what is supposedly an antique flower vase, and the person is demanding $1,000. She's willing to give $200. Come, go, yes, no, and ultimately it is settled for $450. Now, whether you're the winner or the loser does not really matter in this scenario, because you are not perhaps going to go to that person again. On the other hand, if it is your local dealer and it is a local fashion boutique where your wife is going, if not on daily basis, on monthly basis, on weekly basis, then too much of a squeezing may lead to a situation where in the next scenario, the other person may find it more difficult to concede to you. So in negotiation, we have to be very clear. We have to distance the person from the issue, and moreover, we have to be very clear whether it is a one-off negotiation or it could be one in a series of relationships and negotiation which would kind of come up. Now, there is also a very interesting example which I would like to quote, is that we have to learn to differentiate between position and interest. Now, in a classical business school example, there is one pumpkin and all the 3 parties want that pumpkin. So how do you do it? They want the whole of the pumpkin. So there is no question of finding a middle way, theoretically speaking. But once you delve a little deeper, the first person wants the pumpkin because he or she wants to make a Halloween mask out of it. The second one wants soup to be made, and the third one wants just the seeds. So actually, from a single pumpkin, although it looks that the positions are irreconcilable, you find that you can, if you delve deep and dig into the interests that they have, find that you can find a solution where all of the three persons can be satisfied, although they started from the original premise that they wanted the pumpkin. So position and interest we need to slightly delve deeper into. Another thing which, especially in juxtaposition with persuasion, we'll come to that in our next video, is that negotiation is quick. This give, take, slight adjustment, and it's a done deal. Signed, sealed, and delivered, as they say. But what is important is in negotiation, it is a slower process because you have to convince the person, ask him to change his mindset. The mindset may be old, it may be ossified opinions, but generally negotiation is quicker. But what we are going to emphasize here is a very important point. Human beings always like to be in control. So whenever you're negotiating, you should always give the other person options. For instance, in a merger and acquisition type of a scenario, put forth 4 deals, all cash, all stock, stock and cash, deferred cash, or whatever. So whenever possible, if possible, please offer the other person options, and that would make the negotiated settlement much more feasible and possible. Negotiations all the time take place in the political field. In fact, negotiation by definition is a political process. And when I say a political process, I don't mean as in politics, but politics with a capital P, that is the art of reconciling conflicting forces, art of demand over limited resources. So you kind of spin the yarn in such a way that everyone gets a small part of the cake, but he feels satisfied. In fact, I don't know whether it was Winston Churchill who said compromise is the art of dividing the cake in such a fashion that each person feels that he's got the biggest slice. So people have to be satisfied when a negotiated settlement takes place. In any case, it is always better than a technically ideal solution. A suboptimal solution which is agreed to by all the stakeholders, in my opinion, is a better negotiated settlement than something which is otherwise technically the best one. We all know, coming to the next point, that every negotiation has a time limit. Some have to be concluded in a calendar day, within a week. There are deadlines before which something has to happen. The government agency has put a tender, your tender has to be put before that, and 2 contractors are sitting and negotiating. Similarly, political parties want to have an alliance, the last date for filing of nomination is there. So there is always a time limit. And sometimes, more importantly, the time limit could be different for different persons. So if you know while starting the negotiation what the other party's time limit is, you are always on a stronger ground, because as you edge towards the time limit, the other party is naturally inclined to give more concession. In fact, most of the people who have done negotiation in the past, they say that 90% of the concessions are made in the last 10 minutes. Pareto's principle again being applied. Something more which some very experienced negotiator, he told me, that in negotiations there is always one or perhaps at the most 2 points which a person is secretly wanting to hold on to. For instance, if there is a question of division of properties between brothers, the eldest son, if he's sitting in the main principal house, would like to keep that at any cost. And if you know what that golden apple is, then in negotiating process or procedure, you can always leverage the other party's position, knowing fully well that he will concede more for something which he wants to keep. There are of course others, one-on-one negotiation, there are intermediation, arbitration, brokers, multiple stakeholders, but those are only forms of negotiation. What is going to be valid for a 2-dimensional kind of a space would also be valid for a 3 or a 4 dimensional state. But what we need to understand is, for instance, you want to buy out a property, there is a sitting tenant and there is an owner. Then sometimes it is simple to say, well, X is the amount I'm going to put here, and how you divide between yourself is up to you. So there are various ways. Similarly, the broker, if he is an honest broker, sometimes he is willing to, give away a part of his brokerage to clinch a deal, because he knows that if the deal doesn't go through, it may be absolutely a zero income scenario for him. Now friends, coming towards the end of the video, it's very important that once the deal is done, you should shake hands and get up. Don't linger on there. Sometimes you sit and say, wow, you got a lovely deal. This negotiator was a smart one. I've been in the State Labor Department of Punjab, and we've done long-term wage settlements and various industrial disputes with huge public and private sector undertakings. And once we reach a conclusion, sometimes as late as in the wee hours of the morning actually, then the whole idea is to wind up. And before winding up, please at least have very rudimentary paperwork. The great legal documents with all the annexes and the footnotes can follow, but a back of the envelope written and signed there is a must. This property goes to brother A, this property goes to brother B, so much money to be paid in so much month, and then of course the detailed paperwork can take place. And once that is done, please get up and get away, because then if you hang on there, people do tend to reopen issues and get into clarifications, and you give a clarification, that clarification leads to reopening of the further negotiations. So friends, in this we will restrict ourselves to negotiation. Parting word, the person you are negotiating with is not your adversary. In fact, he is a kind of your partner. Otherwise, you would simply direct him to do something. It has to be a win-win situation, and he's your partner because he has something of value to offer to you, which otherwise you won't get, or money cannot buy directly. So therefore, we have to be very tactful. We have to not ruffle the people the wrong way. We have to be patient. And when a compromise, a negotiated settlement is reached, please seal, sign and deliver. Next video, we'll be talking about persuasion, and we'll start off saying that it's fundamentally different. And as we delve deeper, we'll come out with a hypothesis contrary to the popular managerial Harvard and Chicago school opinion that persuasion is fundamentally different from negotiation. Our call and take in that brief video would be that persuasion is a kind of extended negotiation. So friends, we'll be coming out with that video and other small videos, and if you think that these are of any value, or any person, young or old, for whom such videos could be of use, please share with them, and do not hesitate to comment and subscribe. See you soon.